This podcast is a Radio Mike original production. Head to radiomike.com.au to find out more. If you like the show, please support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Radio Mike. Get a bonus podcast every week, The Pat and Mike Show with me and Pat. Plus, you're going a long way to support the show. It takes a long time and a lot of thought and effort to make this show every week. So if you listen every week, please consider supporting us. Plus, if you can rate the podcast 5 stars wherever you're listening, particularly Spotify, that would be amazing as well. Today on the show, the Logies Award upset. Conservatives unsurprisingly hate the Barbie movie. Lizzo might actually be bad as hell. And Paul McCartney's coming back to Australia. All that and more on 20th Century Boy, the show that knows pi to 300 decimal places. Welcome to 20th Century Boy. My name is Radius Magee. You know what? I realized, because stop the music. Sorry, guys. I'm always kind of scrambling when I plan this show, and most of you who listen, and if you're new to the show, welcome. Most of you who listen will know that each week I do a different name. Generally it's themed around Mike or Radio Mike or the initials RM. And usually I obviously come up with it before the show, and I just realized I completely forgot to do it. So off the top of my head, I had to come up with it, and I went with Radius Magee. Is that what I even said? I don't even know what I said. It was so stupid. That was one of the worst names ever, Radius Magee. Send them in anyway. Welcome to 20th Century Boy, a podcast by me, Radio Mike, not Radius Magee. Writer and producer and podcaster from here in Australia. And as always, this podcast, it's the conversations you wish you were having about the stuff that no one else cares about. That is the conceit of this podcast, right? Have a 1 hour sit down or stand up or walk around with me, Radio Mike or Radius Magee, and just, have a one-sided conversation. You can't respond. You can think about responding, but you can't respond. Well, you can, but not in real time. That's the disadvantage of a podcast, guys. That's why radio will never die, because as long as you can call in to a radio station and talk about what's happening right now, radio will never die. Podcasting will never have that. You can get in touch, of course. DM me, radio.mike on Instagram. You can email me, radiomikepod@gmail.com. Tweet about the show at It's Radio Mike on Twitter. Follow the show Instagram at TCBpod. I'm also on TikTok at radio.mike, and the YouTube channel, catch up there, Radio Mike. Lots of stuff going on and lots of ways for you to get in touch. It would be interesting. I wonder how you would do. I think that really the only way you could live interact with a podcast is if you're live streaming the podcast, which essentially just is a radio show. So you could do a podcast and have people call in, but you're really doing that's really what a radio show is. So I don't think there's any, and not everyone will listen to it live, but that's sort of what happens with radio shows anyway. Anyway, not important. Maybe one day we'll do that, but I'm not sure. Getting really busy now, guys, because my holiday is in just about a month now. It's been a long countdown. We booked everything really early, but yeah, heading over, flying into Portugal on the 7th of September. So it's getting really, really close. And I am really excited to take a break from work. But basically I am smashing out everything at the moment. Essentially, here's what I've got to do before I finish up, before I head overseas. I've got to do all my normal work, which includes working on 2 Guys, 1 Cup, the Hamish and Andy pod, and some TOEFOP stuff that I still work on. And then I've got to do this podcast each week. I've got to do my other podcast, Harry Potter and the Boys, each week. All of which is very time intensive. Then we do the Pat and Mike show for Patreon subscribers, patreon.com/Pat and Mike. We're doing one of those every week. Jump on the Patreon, support us. It's the best way to support the show. If you like the show, jump on the Patreon. And that's all just the base level week by week stuff. Then I'm bulk recording episodes to go out while I'm on holiday. So We've already bulk recorded 2 of the 4 20th Century Boy episodes, and they're going well. Then I have to bulk record 4 episodes of Harry Potter and the Boys to go out with them in holidays. So that's going to be something that I need to coordinate with Sam Garlep, who's jumping on for those. And then I've also got a bunch of freelance work that, because I'm going away, I have to get all done in August, right? And I've got to, and so I'm working on those as well, trying to cram it all in. And for each of the video pods for my stuff, TCB and HB the Boys, I'm trying to cut clips from, so my clips keep coming out while I'm overseas as well. So it's a lot of work, but we're getting there. We're getting it done. And you know, I just don't want to, I want to continue to have a presence while I'm overseas. And that means working overtime. And if it means I'm working overtime for all of August now, and then September 7th, I jump on a plane and I'm like, okay, I don't have to work for over a month now, then that's good. Because, yeah, it's worth it. But I want stuff to be coming out while I'm away. I don't want to sort of lose traction. The YouTube channel is growing a lot. The shorts and clips from this podcast that go up there get a lot of views, and big American audience as well. But it's been really fun. So, yeah, to everyone who is supporting the show, listening to the show, there's some fun shows that we've pre-recorded. Producer Pat, again, patreon.com/RadioMike to hear more of him. He joins me for the bulk recorded episodes, and there's some really fun shows that we've done so far and 2 more to record. But yeah, I think I'm having like a mini freak out because I've never been on a long haul flight like this before. I've only been overseas to Bali when I was like 6 years old. Funny story about that. So when I was like 6, my family went to Bali, and we flew out on the 12th of September 2001. So we flew out the day after 9/11. And it was like, I think like, no, it couldn't have, maybe it was the day after. I don't know. I mean, we flew from Melbourne to Bali, and it was like the 12th of September. And I remember mum and dad, and I didn't really get it, but mum and dad were like, should we still go? So that was interesting. And then I've been to Japan 3 times, which is about a 9 or 10 hour flight from Melbourne. I've never been on like a 24-hour kind of around the world flight. And that's the thing about Australia, well, the east coast of Australia in particular, is like, you're just so far from everywhere. Like, I've never been to Europe, and it's sort of because it takes so long to get there. It's like, I think it's 15 hours. We stop over in Dubai, and then from Dubai, there's another 10 hours to Portugal. And I've never been on a long haul flight, so I'm like, oh, what am I going to do on this flight? Now, admittedly, our flight's at 2 a.m., so I'm hoping we'll be able to sleep a bit on that flight. But I actually bought an iPad because I'm like, I'll buy an iPad. I'll bring my iPad. I'll load some movies onto it and whatnot. I'll load some shit onto it and watch it. And then I'm going to bring my Switch. I'm trying to figure out like a bunch of games to buy on Switch that I can play on flights, you know, because we're flying through Europe a lot. Just play in transit and stuff. Pikmin 4 is apparently really good, so I might pick that up. Any other suggestions, please let me know. I kind of want to get like 2 or 3 games to play over there, books. And I'm sure I'm over-preparing, but I just want to make sure I'm never bored on that flight. Like, there's always at least something to spend time on to kill 15 plus 10 hours across 2 flights. But anyway, things are going well, super busy, super tired, smashing through August. I'm just smashing through all my work so I can enjoy this holiday. Of course, over the weekend, actually before that, I've also been watching a lot of the soccer. The FIFA Women's World Cup is on at the moment in Australia. Some of them are being played in Melbourne. And the Matildas, our women's footy team, captained by Sam Kerr. It's been a really entertaining thing. And of course, this year is my bigger year of footy, but it doesn't specify which code of football. So I'm enjoying watching a bit of soccer, the World Game. Really, really interesting. I watched both the Australia games, the one against Nigeria that we lost, 3-1, I think we lost. And then against Canada, we won 4-0, which was awesome. It's really interesting watching watching soccer because it's like much slower, much lower scoring. There's no ads during play, which in footy, every time they kick a goal, there's an ad for like 30 seconds, which is funny. But yeah, I've been really enjoying it. I actually live really close to like the Melbourne parks now, like really close to Rod Laver and the MCG and the rectangular stadium, which is where they were playing against Canada. So you see all the people. It's a really lively area of town. And yeah, it was really cool watching it on TV. And I think it's awesome for women's sport. It's awesome for soccer, like to have so many people supporting it on this level. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to whatever we're playing next. Like I'm not following it super closely, but it is really exciting in soccer when someone scores a goal. Like compared to footy where there's so many goals, soccer there might be like 3 goals in a match and there's so much skill around controlling the ball, finding the space. I used to play soccer at school. I was terrible at it, but yeah, finding space, finding someone to kick it to, not being offside and getting it through that sort of last point of defense. I've really enjoyed it. Of course, over the weekend here in Australia, it was, they call it the Night of Nights of Australian television. The TV Week Logie Awards was on, and I was campaigning pretty hard, and when I say hard, I mean I talked about it once on the show. I was campaigning hard for Osher Günsberg to win the Logie. This man deserves it. He has been working so hard in television. He is one of like television's most popular people, I would argue. Well, I guess he definitely is because he was nominated for the Gold Logie, which is the most popular presenter on Australian Television Award. Really wanted Osher to get the win, and Osher himself was campaigning very hard on his socials, I noticed. He actually shared the clip I made talking about him, wanting him to win the Logie. But unfortunately, the night was full of upsets. The first one, which really took me aback, was when the Best Children's Entertainment Program came on. So the Logie Award for Best Children's Entertainment Program, and Bluey was one of the nominees. And surely, like, I've never watched Bluey, but you hear about it so much that you just assume that Bluey is definitely going to win that award because, like, I didn't recognize any of the other shows that were nominated. I did not recognize. And so I actually did a tweet being like, imagine if Bluey didn't win this award. And then the award went to a show called, like, Crazy Fun Park, which was some, like, live action kids show about a crazy fun park, like a theme park or some shit. And it was an upset. And even the guy who went up to accept the award on behalf of Crazy Fun Park was like, I really didn't think we'd win. Sorry, guys. He was like apologetic that they won. And that wasn't the only upset, you know? I went into it being like, I think Hamish Blake is going to win. I realized that the betting odds, you can bet on Sportsbet for the Logies, and Hamish's odds were like, he was paying like $1.70 to win. Everyone else was like $7, right? So I was like, oh, well, you know, the bookies don't really get it wrong. So that's going to be, Hamish is going to win. Hamish didn't win, but neither did Osher, because the Gold Logie went to
Sonia Kruger!
Sonia Kruger won, and bit controversial because Sonia has made a few kind of racist slip-ups in the past. But you got to think about it like this. This is what I think people don't realize about the Logies, because there's sort of like, I guess in a way it's like the Emmys of Australia. Like they're our TV awards, but it's the TV Week Logie Awards. It's run by TV Week magazine. It's like who reads magazines? So you've literally got to be like, okay, who reads TV Week? They're the kinds of people that are going to be voting. Not to like generalize it, but I would argue that most people who buy those kinds of magazines are like women, probably between 40 and 60. So that, and Sonia Kruger is a woman in her mid-50s, right? And yeah, of course they're going to vote for Sonia. And then it's like whoever has basically it's a popularity contest. Whoever has the most votes win. It's publicly voted. And you can just campaign for it. Tom Gleeson won it a few years ago, and he literally just made a farce of it by campaigning really hard for it and try to ruin everyone else to prove that it was a bit of a joke. But I guess like the Logies aren't, I would argue that the Logies aren't, to people, some people in TV, they're probably really important, and I get that. But to most people, it's like, oh yeah, it's just popularity vote if you campaign. Like Hamish didn't campaign at all. But it is really funny because if you win the Gold Logie, there's no like financial reward. It's literally just a trophy, right? And then you're kind of like not obliged to, but I guess like because of like social and career pressures, you're then obliged to for the next week, you have to literally go on every breakfast radio show, every breakfast TV show, everyone to do press where they ask you the same questions every single morning about like, oh, how does it feel? Did you think you were going to win? What was it like on the night? And you're just like socially obliged to do that for no financial benefit. You just have to participate in it when you didn't even ask to be nominated or win. I just find that really interesting as well. So Logie's really interesting. Noticed this story that sort of came out as I was planning the podcast, which I found really interesting. Lizzo has wound it up in a bit of hot water. Not surprised by this, to be honest, but there are some pretty like damning allegations being made about Lizzo at the moment. Of course, Lizzo, you may know for her classic songs, Good as Hell, you know, I do my hair toss, check my nails, tell me how you feel, feeling good as hell. And, you know, she had a song in the Barbie movie, you know, pretty popular, pretty vocal, kind of, I would say very liberal thinker, which is great. Very like passionate about, you know, body positivity. She's definitely a larger woman. That's fantastic. But interesting because the headline reads, Lizzo accused of sexual harassment and weight shaming by former dancers. Ooh, interesting. That's actually not the worst part. There's actually a bit more. I'm just trying to find it. And this isn't fun. It is kind of funny. Lizzo began inviting cast members of her like dance team, I think, to take turns touching nude performers, catching dildos launched from the performers' vaginas, and eating bananas protruding from the performers' vaginas. Lizzo allegedly pressured a woman to touch the nude breasts of one performer and began goading her when she refused. Now, okay, I think if you're ever in a workplace in which the person in charge is like, hey, eat this banana that's sticking out of this person's vagina, then you're not in a supportive workplace. I mean, this is pretty crazy stuff. And you take all of it with a grain of salt because, like, I mean, I think this is such a multifaceted thing. But first of all, it wouldn't surprise me if Lizzo was a bad person. A lot of celebrities are bad people. And kind of reminds me of Ellen. Like, Ellen's whole thing was be kind to one another. And then the biggest catch-all with that was it turned out she wasn't being kind to anyone. And that was her undoing. The fact that her whole brand was everyone just be nice. Like, it's not hard. Just be nice, be kind to one another. Come on, guys, do it the Ellen way. And then it came out that Ellen was a horrible, horrible person. That was Ellen's biggest undoing, right? And it was surprising. Like, when your whole brand is that, it's surprising when it's opposite. But like, I think now you can come to expect that from celebrities. Particularly like Lizzo, you know, she's very passionate about the body positivity movement and everything like that, which I think is great. But I also like, and this could be controversial, but like, I think sometimes I think it's interesting because, you know, someone like Lizzo might be like, you know, I think, okay, let me rephrase this. I don't think we should shame people for being overweight and obese. And I've been overweight, I've been underweight, whatever. But I also don't think we should teach people, particularly children, that it is like healthy to be obese. Because I don't think, and I'm not an expert, but I don't think there's any like scientific evidence that you could argue it's healthier to be obese than not obese. And I don't mean that in like a shamey way, but I think we should teach people that like healthy living, healthy lifestyles are healthier. Like eating well, exercising, drinking water, all of those things are good. That's not to say you should be shamed for being obese, but I don't think you should sometimes I feel like you can't be like, hey, like being obese is unhealthy. You can't say that anymore. That's like one of the most controversial things you can say, but I think it's like a fundamental truth. Could be wrong, whatever. But then, so Lizzo comes down so hard on people like that. She's very vocal. That's great. Doesn't surprise me that behind the scenes there's a bit of a like ego and a strong kind of force of this weird, not evil, but like really weird leadership style and really like picking on other people and putting them down and making them do things they don't want to do and such. I would totally believe that. I think most celebrities, and I think it also goes into this thought of like liberal celebrities, like really liberal, left-wing, radical celebrities, of which I would put Lizzo in that category. You see a lot of people, not even just celebrities, just people of that side and on the like conservative, the ultra-conservative side of politics, a lot of their online antics are just shaming, name-calling and bullying. Like a lot of Twitter, which is now X, is just bullying people who disagree with you, and we've talked about it a lot, closing off any kind of rational discussion, any kind of middle ground finding. It's just like, you don't agree with me, thus you are wrong and I am right. Everything I think is right. I couldn't possibly be wrong. Therefore, anyone who has a different opinion to me, no matter how tame or radical that opinion may be, they are wrong and I am right. And I need to do everything in my power to make everybody know how wrong they are and punish them and make sure like their family know. And it's like, sometimes it's like you can't think you're right about everything and everyone else is wrong, because everyone has a different opinion than you and everyone is going to think different things about different things. We forget that. Like now it's almost like you can't be someone who has some progressive views and then some slightly more conservative views. People don't think that can exist. You either have to be all in left or all in right. You have to be all in radical conservative right or all in left. And there's no even attempt of understanding that. And I think when you see these people like who are so intent on calling out everyone, like blaming everyone, name calling, all of that stuff, you're like, I bet you deep down you're not the amazing, perfect person you think you are and that people celebrate you for. I think they are, and then suddenly something like this with Lizzo comes out and they're like, oh shit, didn't really keep my behavior in check there. I genuinely think that. Like, I think she would be the first person to call out someone on the opposite side of the political spectrum to her and call them bad names and try and get them fired and all that stuff. And now it comes back to her. There is a very popular phrase. It is, he who is without sin cast the first stone. I think a lot of people these days love to cast stones, but they don't like it when stones are cast on them. Everyone thinks that they are the ultimate right, as in the ultimate correct. Like, I know in my brain that everything I think is right, and then there's all this social pressure from Twitter to make me continue to think that. I get rewarded so much when I put my opinions out there. And then suddenly you're in a situation like this where people who actually know you IRL, right? Because that's the thing. We all think that satisfaction from likes on Twitter and likes on Instagram and stuff is like, oh, see, I am right. Look at all these people who agree with me. But then people in real life who know you are like, no, that's you're not this perfect person that you think you are. I think it's very interesting. Will be interesting to see how it develops. But also, I do think there's incentives for people to lie about this stuff or exaggerate this stuff as well. Like, I think that, you know, it does seem to be like if you are a very successful person, like in Lizzo's defense, a very successful, very popular singer, like there are probably people who are very jealous of you. There are probably people that are very upset with you. You've probably hurt people along the way. Just that's how the game kind of goes. And I think there probably are people who are like, who have had bad experiences with Lizzo, but are trying to burn her. I think that could be possible too. I think that's the thing. You never really know the truth. The truth is always somewhere in the middle. Now we're in this society where we think that the truth has to be one way or another. I think the truth is lying there somewhere in the middle. It's a little bit of both. Like, it's a little bit of Lizzo was a little bit annoying, like was a little bit bad, did some weird things, misread situations. But then there's a little bit of like, we don't like Lizzo. She's a bitch. And we want to specifically like target her now. I think there's a bit of both. But I do think it will be interesting to see who comes out of the woodwork here, because I do find if it was someone who is more conservatively leaning or someone who is more kind of like, because I do think that Lizzo has a lot of supporters in her kind of world and in her space, right? It would be very interesting to see if people come out and condemn her for what's being alleged here, because I think those same people would be the first to pounce on someone else if they weren't Lizzo. And that's where I think we have to start like unpacking this online hypocrisy and this left-wing, right-wing hypocrisy. The world isn't black and white, guys. Let's remember that. Interesting for Lizzo though. Think she's been bad as hell. Thank you very much. 20th Century Boy will be right back. Okay, sorry to interrupt, but I'd love to appeal to the generosity in each and every one of you. If you do listen to this show every week or some weeks, or you listen to any of my stuff and you just want to support me financially, I'm completely independent. As a podcaster, everything is self-funded. There is no external money. So you guys are the guys who keep us going. If you can spare any money at all, patreon.com/Radio Magee. You get a bonus podcast. There is hours and hours of bonus content there. Please consider subscribing to the Patreon and helping us out. Also, if you can, please take a time to 1, subscribe to the YouTube channel Radio Mike, and 2, if you're listening to this podcast on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening, can you please rate it, preferably 5 stars, nothing else. Thank you so much, and let's get back to the episode. Speaking of left wing versus right wing, and I just find this so funny. Conservatives hate the Barbie movie. And it's actually hilarious. Of course, one of my favorite, and when I say favorite, I mean like my favorite person to like watch their stuff and just like laugh at some of the stuff that they say because it's so funny, is Ben Shapiro, right? Just this is basically the general conservative view on the Barbie movie on the internet right now.
My producers dragged me to go see Barbie movie. This movie is not just a piece of shit. This movie is a flaming piece of dog shit piled atop an entire dumpster on fire, piled atop a landfill filled with dog shit.
I just think it's so interesting. Here's the thing. Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, all of these conservative online commentators who are very popular, they were never going to like the Barbie movie. Like the idea that there was a world in which Ben Shapiro went to the Barbie movie, came out and was like, you know what? I'm actually pleasantly surprised by that and I enjoyed it. That world doesn't exist. Like there was no way, like from the moment the Barbie movie was announced, I could have told you exactly what Ben Shapiro was going to say. I genuinely think any social issue, anything that happens, like people like this, like, and whether it's right wing or left wing, people like this, I could already tell you exactly what their opinion is going to be before they even make the video. And I could have told you like a year ago when the Barbie movie comes out, Ben Shapiro is going to do a video talking about how shit he thought it was. I actually said I was going to do my own kind of thoughts video on the Barbie movie. I might have run out of time, so I'm going to do a little bit of it here. But I'm going to focus on like the kind of the conservative backlash to it. Because the main thing is, first of all, I loved the Barbie movie. I thought it was really funny, like laugh out loud funny at a lot of points. And I thought the satire was strong. I thought it was a really good feminist critique. I thought it was fun. I just think like when you go to see the Barbie movie, whoever you are, I'm a straight white guy. I'm 28 years old. You can't go to the Barbie movie as a straight white man or any kind of man. Like, well, whatever. You can't go to the Barbie movie and not expect it to be exactly what it was. If you went to the Barbie movie as a straight white man and you think that movie was supposed to be for you or about you, then you're just an idiot. Like, the whole point of that film was to be like a feminist critique, a look at gender stereotypes. And that's what like Barbie, the toy, has always been. Like that's what that toy is almost known for. So the idea that the movie wouldn't be that is ridiculous. And I just don't know what Ben Shapiro thought the movie was going to be. Like, did he actually think they were just going to make a Barbie movie where Barbie is in her like pink house in her pink car and just goes and does girl stuff all day and that's the movie? Like, of course it was going to be this, and it's done so well. Visually, it's fantastic. The soundtrack is fantastic. Some of the songs are so good. Again, Lizzo has a great song. Billie Eilish has an original song for this film called What Was I Made For, which just works on so many levels. Such a beautiful song. The way they incorporate, spoilers by the way, but the way they incorporate, I think Ruth Handler, who was the creator of Barbie, fantastic. Margot Robbie's amazing. Ryan Gosling's amazing. Everything about this film hits exactly what it needed to hit. And I actually think as a straight white man, like, first of all, nothing about the film was remotely offensive. There was absolutely nothing about the Barbie movie as a straight white guy that I was like, oh, that's so woke, that's so offensive. Nothing. It was very well written satire. It was very interesting. It was very funny. Like the reversal of gender norms was very funny, very well handled. Everything about it, right? I think there's like this arrogance to think that the Barbie movie is supposed to be for you if you're a straight white man, because it's not. And I think there are so many women of my age, you know, women that I grew up with, women that I know, women of like my mum's age, you know, older women and younger women, although I do think the movie is, it's not a kid's movie. I think the only downfall of the film is that I don't think one, it's marketed as though it's a kid's movie, but I don't think that kids like, I don't know, young girls who are probably being brought by their parents, and when I say young girls, I mean like, you know, 5 to 12-year-old girls. I don't think they will yet grasp a lot of the concepts being explored in this film, right? So I think the marketing was a bit off in a way. I don't think it's a kid's movie, but, you know, there are so many women who will get so much out of this movie. And I got a lot out of it as a man, but I think it's not for us. And the reason for that is you look at most movies in the world and they are generally male main characters. Most of the main characters will be male, and generally a lot of the women will be there as love interests or as sexual triumphs or sexual objects of the men in the movie. And you know, I actually, like, one of my old housemates, I remember her saying to me, like, oh, have you ever thought about how, and this is like from a woman's perspective, she's like, have you ever thought about how, like, pretty much every movie, like most movies are just about guys. Like there actually aren't that many, there's more now, but there aren't that many movies historically that were made for women and with women writers and directors and everything like that. And I think that That's why movies like this are so important. That's why. And that's what I think Ben Shapiro and his like ultra conservative perspective on gender norms and gender roles just doesn't understand about it, right? Like, look at something like Star Wars. It's like I would argue Star Wars actually does it all right with Princess Leia. It's got Luke, Han, and Leia. They're the main three. And like, I think they actually gave Leia like some really, like, she's a very strong female character, very well written, but she's also the love interest of both Luke and Han. And if you watch those movies now, like Han Solo to Leia is like, you wouldn't write it like that now. He's very like aggressive and arrogant and kind of sexist towards her and grabs her and kisses her, like all this stuff. And a lot of movies pre the Me Too movement, I'm sorry, but like most comedy movies in particular use women as like the punchline, like women, sex with women and women's bodies and everything are like the punchline, like, oh, this woman has boobs, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's what it is. And like, you think about that as a man and you're like, there is so much about the past in terms of like, particularly with cinema, about how women have been treated historically, both in the movies and outside of the industry, in the actual real life industry, as we know from the Me Too movement. And I think the Barbie movie is just trying to sort of showcase what it's like to be a woman. And I'm not even like a woke person, but I'm not thick enough to not understand what this is doing, right? Like, and I think it's okay to acknowledge all of these things. I think there are issues with being a man as well. I think there's, I'm not trying, like, it seems like you have to be one side or the other. Like, I think this is such a poignant movie. I think it's important. And I think it was really great. I loved it. I thought it was handled so well. And, Ben Shapiro was never going to love it. None of these people were ever going to like this movie. But for someone like me, and probably someone like you, you can at least sort of see this film. Well, I loved it, but at least you could see this film and understand where this is coming from, what this movie means to so many women and to so many people in general. I thought it was fantastic. But it is no surprise to me that conservatives hate it. Don't think I put the sting on. Oh yeah, I did. Here we go. We haven't played this sting for a while.
Get ready to rock, because it's Mike's big year of live music.
And events. Well, that keeps going for a while. I guess I haven't really done this for a while, but I have still been doing live music and events. But wow, very exciting one. Paul McCartney announced this week that he is returning to Australia for his Got Back tour. Awesome. I think this is so exciting. I've never seen him live. And I think the main thing about this that I think is really exciting, well, not exciting, but kind of sad. And the reason I think I have to go and I have to get tickets to see Paul, not only do I love like the music of the Beatles, I've listened to a bunch of Paul's solo stuff and his Wing stuff, but I do think it's likely, and maybe this will motivate you to get tickets, I don't know. I think it's likely this will be Paul McCartney's last ever shows in Australia. It is probable that if I don't see Paul McCartney in October in Melbourne, I will probably never see him for the rest of my life. And, sometimes these days, like, I'm, again, reassessing my relationship with money, reassessing my relationship with life. My relationship with life, that's stupid. Just reassessing, like, what I value. Because I used to all be like, save as much money as possible. But now I'm like, no, like, I think it's important to go to something like this. Like, why would I miss it? I'll be disappointed if I miss it, and I probably will never see Paul McCartney again. And this guy is such, whether you know much of his music or not, I feel like you can acknowledge the cultural significance of someone like Paul McCartney. The Beatles, like seeing this guy live, knowing his story, what he's done, what he's achieved, his sort of expertise in this industry. I just think you have to see him. And so I'm definitely getting tickets and I cannot wait. And I always found Paul was kind of particularly between Paul and John, I always did find Paul was sort of the more down to earth of the two and the more just like, no bullshit. John was a bit woo woo, but yeah, I honestly, I'm definitely getting tickets and I cannot wait for this show. And I just wanted to talk about it here. Question out to everyone this week, because I'd love to do an all the write-ins next week, which is the segment where I read letters, but I'd love to put a question out. Just who would you want to see live? If you had to see a band or artist, dead or alive, live in concert, who would it be? Because I think this is the closest thing you'll see if you go to Paul. This is the closest thing you'll see to the Beatles live. And yeah, I just think it'll be incredible. So write in. Please write in any way you can. One more thing before we wrap up. Because I really wanted to continue doing this. Haven't done it for a while, but it does very, very well in TikTok and people are really liking it. So let's wrap up today with one of these. Of course, it's my bigger year of footy and I like to do this sometimes.
It's Mascot Mania!
Yeah, it's Mascot Mania, where I review the AFL mascots. I generally like to do 3 per episode. One thing that I did want to say, it's kind of funny. I was watching the footy on Friday night. It was it was Collingwood versus Carlton. Big game. Upset from Carlton. They won. I'm so into footy now, guys. And I actually live really close to the MCG. Not like super close, but like I can see it from my balcony, right? And was watching it on TV live, but what I realized is you can hear the roars from the MCG from my house. You can hear the roars of the crowd, right? And because the TV broadcast must be like 3 to 5 seconds delayed from real life, like if someone was lining up for a goal, you would know if they scored it or not because you could actually hear the crowd chanting and screaming before the TV actually showed it. So it actually took all the anticipation out of the match. You just like knew, and you actually like, you can hear the siren go from the actual MCG. It's so like, you can hear it so clearly, right? You can hear it go before it goes on the TV. That was really interesting. So it's actually like, it's spoilers. It's the truest form of spoilers when you live next to the ground that's playing the footy game on TV. Huge spoilers. This week I want to do 3 AFL teams, starting with the Demons, Melbourne Demons, the Melbourne team. The Demons mascot, he's like a devil man because of course they're the demons. And he's got like a moustache, and because of the shape of his head and his moustache, he kind of looks like, this is the best way I can put it. He kind of looks like an Italian uncle who is like the only uncle that never got married, settled down and had kids. And he's now like 50, but he still thinks he's like in his glory days. So he still thinks he can like he still like goes to try and hit on chicks, but like it's known in the family like there's no way he could get any of these chicks, right? And so he's just kind of embarrassing. It's just kind of embarrassing. He's that Italian uncle. That's my assessment of the Demons mascot. You've got the Bulldogs mascot, the Western Bulldogs, of course, is just a bulldog man with a bulldog face. And what I noticed about this guy, who I think his name is Woofer the Bulldog. Woofer looks, and this is a deep cut. Woofer looks like the character. Woofer looks like the bully from the cartoon Arthur. I think his name is Binky. Woofer just looks like Binky, the big yellow. He must be a bulldog. I think Binky actually is a bulldog, and that's why they look the same. But their design is very similar. I actually think they might have, when they were designing Woofer, they might have been like, are there any bulldogs in existing popular culture? And they were like, yeah, the bully from Arthur. And then they traced him and kind of just changed it a little bit. That's the Bulldogs mascot. Finally, the Eagles mascot. Now, the Eagles mascot, similar to the Hawthorn mascot, which I've done in the past, but the Eagles mascot to me just doesn't look quite right. it doesn't quite look like an eagle. It kind of more looks like a duck. And to me, it kind of feels like Donald Duck's sons, like the three sons, Huey, Dewey, and Louie, kind of looks like one of them grew up and kind of distanced himself from the duck family and moved to Australia and became a fan of the West Coast Eagles. That's what the West Coast Eagles mascot makes me think. It's like a relative of Donald Duck, possibly his estranged son, who moved to Australia and started to become a fan of the West Coast Eagles. That's my assessment. Let me know who I should do next. And let's finish the show by doing one of these bad boys. The plug. Again, would love for you to support the Patreon, patreon.com/Radio Mike. Anything you can give would mean a lot. We actually did get a new Patreon. We lost 4 Patreons this month, so that's not good. Please jump back on. I would very much appreciate that. Fuck. I would really appreciate if people could jump on. It would mean a lot. The Pat and Mike show is still running. The Pat and Mike show every week, some really fun stuff. Detective Pat this week discovered something very interesting.
Someone has ripped off the Bob the Builder theme song. First up, the classic beloved Bob the Builder theme. Bob the Builder, can we fix it? Bob the Builder, yes we can. Here's the theme song to Lunar Jim. Tell me if you notice any similarities. Lunar Jim, let's get lunar. Lunar Jim, let's blast off.
It's thematically the exact same thing. Of course, Harry Potter and the Boys continues to be hilarious. Here's a little bit from last week's app. We all know Hagrid is half giant. His dad was a normal-sized wizard, and his mum was a giant. How does that occur? Is he climbing up there? Because you'd think Hagrid's dad would only come up to, her knee. Would she even feel it?
Sure. I would like to think that Mrs. Hagrid would, just lie down in a field and she would just ready herself, and then Mr. Hagrid set up maybe some kind of diving board and he just kind of dives right in.
Of course, 2 Guys, 1 Cup each week on the Listener app. You can hear me on my bigger year of footy in more detail. As well as that, something kind of exciting coming up, which I can't talk too much about at the moment, but it is a little exciting thing that I will tell you more about when the time comes. So that's actually not a plug. That's a non-plug. Should put another sting in that's like the non-plug, but I'm not going to do that. That's about it, guys. Thank you so much. Speak to you next week. I'll see you on the Pat and Mike show if you're on the Patreon. My name's been Radio Mike. This has been the inside of my mind. Catch you later. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you want to listen to a bit more of me, you can go over to the Patreon, patreon.com/Radio Mike, and listen to the Pat and Mike show every Friday. Or you can listen right now to Harry Potter and the Boys, my other podcast. It's up there wherever you're listening to this podcast. Thanks so much. See you next week. This podcast was a Radio Mike original production. Head to radiomike.com.au to check out all our other content, stay up to date at radio.mike on Instagram, and get in touch, radiomikepod@gmail.com.